Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place that performs, let's call it digital autopsy on some major cultural landmarks.
Yeah, digging through the code, basically.
Exactly. And today, we are definitely digging. We're strapping on our Pip-Boys, heading back to the capital Wasteland. Specifically, 2008, that's the year Bethesda really shook things up, bringing the classic Fallout series into 3D with Fallout 3.
And it wasn't just, a simple perspective shift. It was a complete reimagining. It really did define a whole generation of these big open world RPGs. The scale they were aiming for was just huge.
Staggering, really. But I guess when you're building something that enormous, that intricate, and you're on a deadline, well, stuff gets left behind.
Oh, absolutely. The development floor inevitably becomes the cutting room floor. Happens all the time.
For sure. And even though Fallout 3 felt absolutely massive when it came out, the game files, the code itself, holds these, well, ghosts, I guess.
Yeah.
Echoes of an even larger game. More complex, maybe structurally quite different in places.
And we're not just talking about, like, a different texture on a rock or something minor. We're talking major quest lines, potentially, whole sections of the city, core game mechanics that, if they'd been left in, would have completely changed how you experience the capital Wasteland.
Right. So our mission today, it's pretty much pure code archaeology. We're going through the source material you've shared, developer notes, interviews, file extractions, all that good stuff, to try and piece together what Bethesda's original, maybe unrestrained vision looked like.
And this deep dive, it's really for you, the listener, who wants to understand the full picture. What were the big decisions? What were the tough trade-offs they had to make? What was the sheer scale of the thing they were trying to build before, well, reality set in?
And it ties directly into the game's development story, doesn't it? I mean, Fallout 3 was a massive hit, no question. But that ending, oh boy.
Yeah, the original ending. That abrupt, you have to sacrifice yourself ending caused a huge backlash from players. It basically proved that the team was iterating, changing things right up to the wire.
It literally forced them to release the Broken Steel DLC, didn't it? Just to kind of tack on an extension to the story and actually let people keep playing after the main quest.
Exactly. And that whole process, that iterative cycle, the need to cut things that, as the designers apparently said, just didn't work, it left really deep marks in the game's DNA. When you look at what got cut, you start to appreciate the immense pressure they were under.
Trying to translate that huge, stats-heavy, top-down world of the originals into a real-time 3D experience must have been, well, a nightmare in some ways.
Yeah, a challenge, to say the least.
Okay, so let's dive right into that. The scale issue seems like the best place to start. Section 1, the geography of ambition. Because honestly, the most mind-blowing thing from the cut files is the map itself.
It really is. The scale seems to have been the biggest bottleneck. The final version of downtown DC, right? It's dense, dangerous, maze-like.
Oh yeah, claustrophobic almost.
Well, according to the sources, the original plan was for that central DC area to be twice that size.
Wait, twice? Seriously? That's not a small change. That's fundamentally reshaping the entire game world.
It is. Think about the DC you play through. It feels tight, compressed, like you said, claustrophobic, which works. It creates tension.
Definitely.
But the cut content suggests that wasn't entirely the original plan. DC was supposed to breathe more. It was meant to be more spread out, a bit more like a real ruined city, maybe.
So why cut it? I mean, if they built it.
Well, the reason given, apparently by Todd Howard and Emil Pagliarulo, was pretty blunt. They said those larger areas just didn't work. Even if the assets were done, or mostly done, if the sheer size messed up the game's flow, the pacing.
Performance. I bet performance on consoles back then was a huge factor.
Oh, absolutely. If it dragged the frame rate down into the single digits, or if, like you said, players were spending hours just walking between key quest points, they had to make a call.
That sounds like the classic game dev dilemma, right? Fidelity versus playability. You have these awesome detailed areas, but if they break the actual experience of playing,
you gotta cut them. It's brutal, but necessary. So the DC we got, you could think of it like a compressed spring, tightly wound. The cut content shows just how much pressure they had to apply to get it into that functional state.
And we can actually see the evidence of this compression in the files, right? You mentioned skipped indexes.
Yeah, exactly. File miners found these gaps in the numbering for the main DC world space files.
Okay, let's get a bit technical for you listening. Imagine developers building a huge map. They often break it into chunks, right? and number them sequentially, like chapters in a book, 1, 2, 3.
Precisely. But in the Fallout 3 files, they apparently jump from DC World 01, that's the area around Chevy Chase, straight past DC World 02, and land on DC World 03, which is DuPont Circle.
But DC World 02 is just missing. A whole chapter ripped out.
Essentially, yeah. It represents a physical hole in the map's blueprint, a phantom limb, as you put it.
Yeah.
And when you start tracing where these missing index numbers would have been on a real map, you realize just how much territory got cut.
Okay, lay it on us. What are these phantom neighborhoods?
It's pretty staggering. We're talking Adams Morgan, a really distinct cultural area. Then entire planned districts like Alexandria down south, Crystal City, Monticello Park, Buzzard Point near the rivers, and something called the Jefferson District.
Wow. So basically, huge swaths to the south and west of the mall area just vanished.
Seems like it. The game world we ended up playing is essentially amputated.
But the key thing here, analytically speaking, is if these areas were mostly finished, like the designer suggested, cutting them must have happened relatively late in development. That's a massive structural change.
Oh, absolutely. It wouldn't just make the map smaller, it would force them to completely rethink quest paths. They'd have had to reroute everything, basically cramming the remaining landmarks much closer together to keep any sense of progression.
It changes the whole feel of travel, doesn't it? If the original map was that sprawling, getting from, say, Rivet City all the way up to the Citadel would have felt like a proper expedition.
Exactly. Cutting all that land made the world denser, sure, but also less vast. It fundamentally altered your relationship with just moving through the world. Less exploration, maybe more focused action.
And this geographical surgery, this compression, it leads directly to what is, I think for many players, the single most frustrating part of Fallout 3.
Let me guess. The metro tunnels.
Bingo. The metro system. That absolute labyrinth where you spend half your time lost fighting ghouls and the other half staring at those in-game maps trying to figure out how they connect.
Yeah, those maps seem almost deliberately misleading sometimes.
Well, that's the thing. That navigational nightmare isn't just bad design, it's actually evidence of the cuts. Apparently in the early alpha builds, the subway layout was much more logical. It actually corresponded to those DCTA maps you find scattered around.
So you were meant to use the maps to navigate properly.
Seems like it. You'd look at a map on the wall, figure out your route, and the tunnels would, more or less, connect logically to the surface exits shown.
Okay, so what happened?
Well, once they chopped out huge parts of the surface world, they suddenly had all these metro stations leading to nowhere, to areas that didn't exist anymore.
Ah, right. So they couldn't just leave dead ends everywhere.
Exactly. So they had to take the stations that were left, the ones connected to surviving surface areas, and basically just stitch them together underground. They created these nonsensical, winding tunnels that often skip huge distances above ground.
They essentially spaghetti wired the remaining stations together.
Pretty much. The metro stopped being a functional transit network and became more like a dungeon crawl disguised as a fast travel alternative.
So, if you've ever felt completely lost and frustrated down there, it's not just you. It's the developers basically patching over these huge holes left by the cut surface content. It's like the visual evidence of structural panic.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. It always felt weirdly disconnected.
And we even know some of the specific bits that were cut that contributed to this mess. We're talking major station interiors like L'Enfant Plaza Station.
Wow. L'Enfant Plaza, that's a huge hub in real DC.
Exactly. Also cut were things called the infested sewer, waterfront sewage, and something named the Potomac Steamworks. Apparently, that Steamworks was meant to be a key connection linking Falls Church all the way down to the cut Monticello Park area.
Losing that kind of major underground connectivity really cripples the system, doesn't it? If the metro had actually felt like a real navigable network linking important, distinct districts like L'Enfant, it would have been amazing, a real asset.
Instead of the universal reviled chore became for many players, it would have added so much depth, literally, to the map. Verticality, more exploration.
But they prioritized the surface, it seems. They kept the landmarks, the big combat arenas above ground, even if it meant making the system that connects them completely illogical.
Seems like that was the trade-off, yeah. Preserve the iconic DC skyline, even if getting around beneath it makes no sense.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. We've talked about the vast shrinking world outside. Let's move inward now to the people and maybe not so people that we lost connections with. Section 2, lost connections and world-building characters.
Right, and this is where you see hints of Bethesda trying to add more depth, maybe more nuance, to the lone wanderer's own story and the world itself. starting right back in Vault 101.
Ah, the birthday party. Good times. Well, mostly. We all remember that scene, right? Your dad, Amada, Butch being a jerk.
Classic Butch. But the files mention 2 other kids who were supposed to be there but weren't, Susie Mack and Christine Kendall.
Okay, I don't remember them being mentioned as missing the party in the game. They show up later as adults, right?
They do. But the point from the sources is that there's no dialogue, no scene explaining why they weren't at the party. Were they sick? Did they not like you? Were their parents fooding with your dad? We don't know.
It sounds like a small detail, but I can see how that absence kind of flattens the backstory a bit. It removes a potential hook, a thread you could follow about your childhood relationships in the vault.
Exactly. It prevents you from building that slightly deeper, more intimate history before everything goes sideways. It's a missed opportunity for some early character building.
And once you're out of the vaults, out in the big, scary wasteland, the game often feels like it defaults to hostility pretty quickly. Everything wants to kill you.
It does lean heavily on combat, but the cut content suggests the Wasteland was originally meant to have a few more, well, neutral or even friendly faces early on, which subtly changes the tone.
Okay, like who?
Well, there's Mr. Mulberry. He was a Mr. Handy robot.
Like Codsworth.
Yeah, same model type. But he was supposed to be found really early, right there in Moriarty's saloon in Megaton.
Okay, what was his deal? Was he serving drinks? Polishing the bar?
His exact role isn't totally clear from the files, unfortunately, but the key thing is, he wasn't hostile. He was just there, functional. He would have been one of the very first robots you encountered outside the vault.
That actually feels kind of important for setting expectations, doesn't it? If the first robot you meet isn't trying to saw you in half, but is maybe, I don't know, sweeping the floor.
It calibrates your assumptions. You learn immediately that robot doesn't automatically equal enemy, which makes the later encounters with, say, aggressive sentry bots or Soltrons potentially more impactful because, not all robots are like that. It adds a layer of nuance.
Nuance seems to be a recurring theme with the cut characters. What about this other one, Meet the Ghoul?
Ah, Meat. Now this one is fascinating. He was planned to be a friendly glowing one.
Whoa, hold on. A friendly glowing one? Aren't those things basically walking radiation bombs? Super aggressive, high-level feral ghouls.
That's exactly the point. In the final game, yes. Seeing that green glow is basically your cue to run or start blasting. They are pure enemy types.
It was a friendly one. Where was he supposed to be?
He was intended to work in the chop shop down in the underworld, the Ghoul City.
A glowing one working in a shop. That completely subverts expectations.
Massively. His mere existence would have immediately shown the player that the ghoul condition isn't monolithic. It doesn't always lead to mindless virality, even with extreme irradiation like a glowing one.
It would have blurred the lines, right? Softened that very black and white view the game presents, where ghouls are either civilized, like the underworld residents, or completely feral monsters you have to put down.
Precisely. It forces you, the player, to question your assumptions about radiation, mutation, and maybe even prejudice within the wasteland itself. It adds a layer of moral complexity.
So why cut him? Seems like a powerful piece of world building.
My guess, probably for gameplay clarity. By removing meat, Bethesda ensures that every time you see that distinctive green glow and hear that crackling sound, unequivocally, that you are in immediate danger. It simplifies encounter design.
They sacrificed that ambiguity for clearer combat cues. Makes sense from a design perspective, I suppose, but it's a shame narratively.
It does feel like a deliberate simplification. And we see a similar kind of complexity being removed from quests, too, like the replicated man, the hunt for the android.
Yeah, Harkness and Rivet City. Great quest. Trying to figure out if he's the synth or not.
Well, the sources indicate there was a cut stage to that quest. It would have involved you traveling to the slaver hub, Paradise Falls.
Ugh, Paradise Falls. Not exactly a tourist spot. Why there?
To meet a character named Little Toe.
Little Toe. Okay. Sounds charming. What was his role?
The details are a bit speculative, but the material suggests he had crucial information needed to track down the missing synth, Harkness. He was part of the puzzle.
Just an informant then?
Maybe. But the really interesting bit of speculation, based on file fragments or notes, is that Little Toe might have actually been a synth himself.
Get out. A synth working with the slavers in Paradise Falls.
Possibly. One who chose a darker path, maybe embraced being self-serving, even became a slaver himself.
Wow. Okay, that is a huge potential lore drop. Cutting that scene, it definitely simplified how you resolve that quest. But the idea that a synth could choose evil, could choose to exploit others,
It completely foreshadows the kind of complex moral and philosophical questions about synth that Fallout 4 would later dive into headfirst, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It shows Bethesda was wrestling with the idea of synth agency and morality way back in Fallout 3. Cutting Little Toe kept the replicated man focused on Harkness's identity crisis, but lost that broader implication.
It's another case of streamlining, perhaps, keeping the narrative tighter, less ambiguous. We also lost some smaller but still important characters who just added texture to the world.
Like who?
Remember Margaret, the technician at Galaxy News Radio?
Vaguely. Isn't she the one you hear on the radio? If Three Dog meets an unfortunate end, she takes over the broadcasts?
That's her. You hear her, but you never actually meet her in the game world. Apparently, she was originally meant to be an encounterable NPC. You could have put a face to the voice keeping GNR on the air.
Ah, that would have been nice. Makes the station feel more real.
And then there's something completely cut, something that would have really amplified the social commentary. The Tenpenny Tower radio station.
Wait, Tenpenny Tower had its own radio station, besides GNR.
It was planned, yeah. And based on the audio files that still exist, it was designed to be the complete antithesis of GNR. Galaxy News Radio is all about hope, survival, the common person.
Three Dog trying to keep spirits up, yeah.
Tenpenny Tower Radio was apparently the voice of the rich, sequestered elite. The sources describe the remaining audio as full of these trite platitudes, basically championing the wealthy lifestyle inside the tower and openly looking down on the poor schmucks struggling outside.
Oh my God, that's brilliant. Imagine tuning into that while you're, like, fighting off rad roaches in some ruined basement for scraps.
Exactly. You're barely surviving listening to Three Dogs Blues, then you switch channels and hear some smug voice saying, "Another glorious morning from the top. Isn't the Wasteland simply dreadful today? So glad we're above it all."
It would have made the class warfare theme, which is kind of simmering under the surface in Fallout 3, much more explicit and satirical.
Definitely. Cutting that station kind of dulled the game's satirical edge, maybe. It made the conflict around Tenpenny Tower feel more about simple monster invasion versus safety, rather than a clash of ideologies and lifestyles.
Losing that feels like a real shame. Okay, let's move on to the quests themselves. The big narrative chunks that got changed or removed. Section 3. Quests that would have redefined the story, and maybe most importantly, the ending.
Yeah, the ending is key here. The most direct piece of evidence that Bethesda knew the original ending was problematic, or at least incomplete, is a cut quest called Last Rites.
Last Rites. Okay, what was that?
Well, significantly, its internal quest ID number places it directly after Take It Back, which is the final mission in the base game.
So it was meant to be a post-ending quest, before Broken Steel even existed.
That's the strong implication. It suggests that even before the player backlash forced their hand with the DLC, the developers themselves felt the need for some kind of structured content or epilogue after the main story concluded.
That's fascinating. It shows they recognized that just stopping dead after the sacrifice felt abrupt. They were trying to build some kind of soft landing, some resolution, even if they couldn't fully implement it before launch.
It sort of validates the fan reaction in a way. It wasn't just players wanting endless content, it was about needing narrative closure. That hard stop felt unsatisfying, and Last Rites, whatever it involved, hence they knew that too.
We also have changes to existing quests.
Right.
Like the huge Wasteland survival guide quest for Moira Brown and Megaton.
Ah, yes, Moira's epic fetch quest. Already one of the longest side quests in the game, sending you all over the map to get injured in various creative ways.
For science.
For science. But apparently it was supposed to be even longer. There was a final stage that got cut.
Oh no. What else did you want us to do? Wrestle a Deathclaw blindfolded?
Almost feels like it sometimes, right? No, this was actually more bureaucratic, but still dangerous. The cut final step involved you traveling to the ruins of Hubris Comics.
Hubris Comics. Okay, that location is in the game, but it's just kind of a generic dungeon, isn't it? Full of ghouls.
Exactly. But originally, you were supposed to go there specifically to print out copies of the completed Wasteland Survival Guide. You'd get the manuscript from Moira, take it to Hubris Comics, somehow use old printing presses maybe, and then bring the physical copies back to her.
Wait, they cut the printing stage.
Yeah.
The one part that doesn't involve getting irradiated or maimed.
Well, getting to Hubris Comics and back probably involved plenty of irradiation and maiming, but yeah, the actual task was printing. And the real kicker, the irony here, is in Moira's final dialogue in the released game.
What does she say?
She makes a comment about how the player must be cynical for assuming she'd asked them to do another dangerous task.
Huh. But originally, she was going to. The printing run to ghoul-infested hubris comics was likely intended to be that final dangerous task.
Precisely. They cut the task but left the dialogue, making her comment feel completely unearned and slightly bizarre. It's a clear artifact of removed content.
That final trip to Hubris Comics would have actually been kind of cool, though. The mundane task printing brochures set against the backdrop of post-apocalyptic danger. Just gotta run off some copies, gotta fight through 5 super mutants first.
It fits the Fallout vibe perfectly, doesn't it? Now, let's talk about a cut quest that raises some really interesting questions about one of the main factions. Infiltration. This involved the Brotherhood of Steel and Rivet City.
Okay, Brotherhood and Rivet City. In the final game, they're allies, right?
Yeah.
Elder Lyons' Brotherhood is presented as pretty heroic, working with the Rivet City scientists on Project Purity. The good guys, basically.
Largely, yes. They're portrayed as the noble protectors, a departure from the more isolationist Brotherhood chapters in previous games. But this cut quest, Infiltration, complicates that picture significantly.
How so?
It would have required the player to sneak into Rivet City specifically through the underside of the aircraft carrier hull to secretly steal a power source that the Brotherhood needed.
Steal. From Rivet City, they're supposed allies. That completely contradicts their image.
Doesn't it? It makes them look manipulative, secretive, willing to undermine their partners for their own gain. Honestly, it sounds much more like the morally gray, tech-hoarding Brotherhood we saw in Fallout 1 and 2.
Wow. So cutting this quest feels like a very deliberate decision to ensure the DC Brotherhood remained unambiguously heroic.
That's the strong implication, yeah. Infiltration probably made the Brotherhood seem too aggressive, or maybe just too complicated for the straightforward heroic narrative they decided to go with for Lyons' chapter. It clashed with the final direction.
So we lost a quest that would have made us question the Brotherhood's methods, maybe even Elder Lyons' leadership. It removes a layer of moral ambiguity about the supposed good guys. That's a significant narrative simplification.
It is. It reduces player choice in how they perceive the faction. And speaking of lost potential, there was apparently an entire questline cut that was tied to a major character, MS-07. This involved Sarah Lyons.
Sarah Lyons. Any more content with her would have been fantastic. She's arguably the most memorable companion, the face of Lyons' pride. Why cut a quest involving her?
Details are scarce, unfortunately. All we really know is the quest code, MS-07, and that it involved Sarah and something called a strange disk. Whatever it was, cutting content related to such a popular character is, well, it's baffling. It just shows how much shuffling and prioritizing must have been happening behind the scenes.
Man, a Sarah Lyons mystery quest involving a strange disc. That sounds awesome. Okay, what about the DLCs? Did they have cuts too?
Oh yeah, even the expansions weren't immune. Take Point Lookout. A big part of its atmosphere is the mystery surrounding the swamp folk, right? Why are they so deformed and hostile?
Yeah, it feels like some kind of weird local mutation or maybe generations of inbreeding. It's creepy because it's unexplained.
Well, it wasn't originally supposed to be that unexplained. There was a cut holotape called the New Plague pamphlet.
New Plague?
Yeah, apparently this holotape would have explicitly told the player about the specific disease affecting the swamp settlers. It would have removed a lot of that medical ambiguity and detailed exactly what was making them so dangerous and strange.
Huh. Mixed feelings on that one. On the one hand, the mystery is part of what makes Point Lookout so effective and atmospheric. On the other hand, the lore nerd in me really wants to know the specifics of the New Plague.
It's that trade-off again, isn't it? Ambience versus concrete information. Mystery versus lore.
Definitely. And speaking of lore and emotional beats, there was apparently a small but powerful audio cut during the main quest climax, The Waters of Life.
The big moment in the purifier control room with your dad, James.
Yeah, his sacrifice. Pretty gut-wrenching scene as it is.
It is. But the sources mention unused audio files from that sequence. In these files, James apparently calmly tells Dr. Lai to leave the control room to get to safety right before he initiates the overload to stop Colonel Autumn and purify the water.
Oh, wow. So instead of just yelling and acting desperately, he has this moment of calm focus on saving Lai.
Seems like it. Hearing him maintain that composure, prioritizing his colleagues' safety, even in his literal last seconds, it really underscores his selflessness, his paternal nature maybe. It adds a layer of reasoned sacrifice to the act.
That makes it even more heartbreaking, honestly. It gives him a more complete, heroic final moment than the slightly more frantic version we got in the final game.
It feels like a small cut, just a few lines of dialogue, but it subtly changes the emotional resonance of that pivotal scene. A tragic loss for his character arc, really.
Okay, let's get into the nuts and bolts now. the things we could have used, the systems we could have played with. Section 4, the arsenal and mechanics graveyard. This feels like where the DNA of the older classic Fallout games really got trimmed back.
I think that's fair to say. You see Bethesda grappling with how much of the old school statistical depth to keep in their new action RPG framework, and often the complexity lost out.
Prime example, the throwing skill.
Yep, it existed. The skill itself was in the game files. There's even a classic Vault Boy icon specifically for him winding up to throw a baseball.
Which is funny because you find baseballs in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And they're listed internally as potential weapons, right?
Yeah.
But you can't really do anything effective with them.
Exactly, because they cut the actual skill that would have governed accuracy, range, damage with thrown items like baseballs, or maybe even knives, spears perhaps. Who knows what else was planned? Non-explosive thrown weapons basically became useless vendor trash.
That's a bigger deal than it sounds, isn't it?
Yeah.
In the classic games, throwing was a legitimate combat style. Grenades, sure, but also other things.
It removed a whole tactical avenue, especially for low-tech or non-explosive options. It simplified combat and inventory maybe, but at the cost of that tactical depth.
But didn't that icon come back later?
It did. Funnily enough, the exact same Vault Boy baseball throwing icon was reused for the Heave Ho perk in Fallout New Vegas, which did improve throwing range and velocity for explosives, so the idea didn't completely die.
Interesting. What else got cut from the classic mechanics?
Well, there was the Kamikaze trait, or rather perk, as it was intended for Fallout 3. This was a direct import from the older games.
Kamikaze.
Yeah.
Sounds intense. What did it do? For listeners who might not know the originals.
It was a classic high-risk, high-reward choice. As a perk in Fallout 3, the cut version would have given you a +5 bonus to your sequence, which basically means more action points, or AP, for using VATS. So you could perform more actions, shoot more, move more in VATS.
Okay, that sounds pretty powerful. What's the catch? Kamikaze implies a big downside.
Oh yeah, the massive cost was it dropped your armor class, your damage resistance, or DR in Fallout 3 system effectively to 0, a whopping net to 20 DR penalty.
Ouch. So you become a total glass cannon. You can dish out punishment like crazy in VATS, but if anything so much as sneezes on you, you're toast.
Pretty much, you're fighting naked, essentially. That kind of extreme trade-off that requires real strategic thinking and careful character building, that's exactly the sort of granular RPG element that a lot of veterans of Fallout 1 and 2 felt was kind of smoothed over in Fallout 3's transition.
Why do you think they cut it? Too hard to balance.
Probably. It introduces a huge variable, maybe too complex for the more streamlined special and perk system they implemented. Easier just to remove that extreme option.
Makes sense. Now, you mentioned earlier how frustrating the dark metro tunnels were. There was a cut mechanic that might have helped with that.
Yes. This one is brilliant, actually. Ant vision.
Ant vision, like seen like a giant ant?
Sort of. It was planned as a special visual effect the player could get. You'd activate it by consuming ant nectar, which is an item that actually is still in the game, dropped by the giant ants.
Okay, so you drink the nectar,
Hmm.
and what happens?
The idea was it would grant you a form of natural night vision, specifically designed to help you navigate those pitch black areas, especially the metro tunnels, without relying solely on the Pip-Boy light.
That is genius. Seriously, instead of that immersion-breaking green glow from your wrist computer, you have an in-world biological solution tied directly to the Wasteland's mutated ecology.
Right. It integrates perfectly. You hunt the ants, you get a resource, and that resource helps you overcome an environmental challenge. It's elegant design.
So why cut it? Technical issues, maybe. Implementing a visual filter like that.
Could be. Or maybe they just decided the Pip-Boy light was sufficient, simpler. But cutting ant vision definitely forced players into relying only on the Pip-Boy, which feels less like a clever survival tactic and more just a flashlight. Real shame, that one.
Okay, now for the really fun stuff. The toys we almost got to play with. The cut weapons. We have to start with the big one. The cryolator.
Ah, yes. The freeze ray. Famous now from Fallout 4, the heavy weapon that encases enemies in ice.
But it was originally meant for Fallout 3.
All the signs point to yes. The name, the actual design files, even schematics for crafting it, they're all sitting there in the Fallout 3 game data. But it just never appeared in the world.
Any idea why? Was the freezing mechanic too buggy back then?
That's the most likely culprit. Implementing a whole new status effect like Frozen with all the accompanying physics and animation states, it might have just been too complex or unstable for the Fallout 3 version of the engine. It took them another whole game cycle, another 7 years, before they finally got it working in Fallout 4.
Patience is a virtue, I guess. What else is in the weapons graveyard? Anything for the DLCs?
Yeah, there's evidence of a katana specifically tied to the Mothership Zeta DLC files.
A katana. Okay, that fits. Wasn't there samurai abducted on the ship?
Exactly. Toshiro Kago. So the speculation is maybe you could have gotten this unique melee weapon from him, either as a reward for helping him or maybe taken from his body if things went sour. It would have added some nice melee variety to that DLC.
Definitely needed more melee options up there. Okay, we absolutely have to talk about the joke weapons now, the really weird stuff.
Oh, you mean Phil's fun projectiles?
That's the one. Tell the listeners about this masterpiece of engineering.
Right. So these weren't just bullets, they were tiny dog-shaped projectiles, apparently using the 3D model of the vicious dog enemy just scaled down.
Dog-shaped bullets. Perfect.
And the best part, according to the file descriptions, when you fired them, the sound effect wasn't a bang, it was a dog bark.
Barking dog bullets. That is simultaneously the stupidest and most amazing thing I've ever heard.
Isn't it? It's so profoundly useless, so completely ridiculous. You have to assume it was just some developers messing around late at night.
Had to be. I mean, you can see why it got cut, right?
Yeah.
It's just too silly, maybe. Even for Fallout's dark humor, arcing dog bullets might be a step too far. Doesn't fit the gritty tone they were mostly aiming for.
Yeah, it feels like a casualty of maintaining tonal consistency, pure developer shenanigans that, quite rightly, didn't make the final cut. Still hilarious that it exists in the files, though.
Okay, moving from ridiculous weapons to ridiculous armor. Or maybe just fabulous armor. Tell me about the pink power armor.
Ah, the legend. Yes, it exists in the files. Officially, it's called the T-45B Power Armor of Love.
Power armor of love. I love it. Describe it.
It's exactly what it sounds like. A standard suit of T-45B power armor, helmet included, but the whole thing is painted a rather fetching shade of bright pink, and crucially, it has a white heart stenciled onto the breastplate.
That is canon. I don't care what Bethesda says, that is canon. It's too perfect. And the modders brought it back immediately, didn't they?
Oh, instantly. As soon as those files were discovered, the pink power armor of love became one of the most popular aesthetic mods. It's just too iconic, too wonderfully out of place to leave buried in the code.
Were there any cut armor pieces that had more practical uses?
Yeah, few. There were night vision goggles. They were apparently part of an outfit called the Merc Veteran outfit.
Night vision goggles. What would they have done? Perception boost? Actual night vision?
It's not entirely clear. It could have been a stat boost or maybe true thermal or night vision. Like the Ant Vision we discussed, implementing proper night vision mechanics can be tricky to balance and might have performance costs.
Right. It simplifies things like lighting design if you don't have to worry about players having perfect vision in pitch blackness. Another potential simplification cut.
Seems likely. And for the real power players, there was the Tesla Resonance Armor, which was cut from the Broken Steel DLC.
Tesla resonance armor.
Yeah.
Sounds potent. What were its stats?
Pretty hefty specialized bonuses. Energy weapon skill plus 10 and radiation resistance plus 20.
Okay, that's a serious piece of late game gear, especially for an energy weapons build dealing with the irradiated areas in Broken Steel. Why cut that? Seems like exactly the kind of reward players would want.
Hard to say for sure. Maybe they felt it was overpowered, or perhaps the unique visual model wasn't finished. Whatever the reason, its removal definitely left a gap for high-end specialized energy weapon armor in the DLC loot pool.
Looking at all this stuff together, the skills, the perks, the weapons, the armor, you really get a sense of Fallout 3 being this transitional game, don't you?
Absolutely. It feels like the game where Bethesda was trying very hard to fuse their modern open-world engine and design philosophy with the deep, complex, sometimes fiddly statistical systems of the original Black Isle RPGs.
And when that fusion proved unstable, or too difficult, or maybe just too time-consuming, they tended to trim back the complex statistical side first, the side inherited from the classics.
That seems to be the pattern, yeah. Streamlining one out over complexity in many cases.
Which brings us right back around to where we started this whole deep dive. Those immense developmental pressures.
Yeah, we've really seen the two main forces at play, haven't we? First, there was just the sheer ambition of building that massive 3D capital Wasteland. That led to those huge geographical cuts, basically ditching almost half the planned DC area just to make the game run, to make it playable.
And second, there was the pressure of legacy, the weight of the original Fallout games. And that seems to be what led to cutting those detailed RPG mechanics, the throwing skill, the kamikaze perk, maybe even nuanced characters like Meet the Ghoul, whose existence complicated the world's rules.
They succeeded in delivering a huge, impressive world, no doubt. But it was a world that ended up being structurally simpler, maybe narratively more straightforward than originally planned. And in the process, they did lose some of that granular RPG depth, that moral ambiguity that the older fans really cherished.
Clarity over complexity, heroism over ambiguity, danger over nuance. Seems to be the recurring trade-off.
But here's the really cool part, the silver lining to all this cut content. Those files, those ideas, they never truly vanish, do they?
Not when you have a dedicated fan community.
Exactly. The modding community essentially became digital archaeologists and restorers. They found Mr. Mulberry, they found Margaret, they found the pink power armor of love, and they put them back in the game. They've tried to reconstruct cut quests, re-enable mechanics.
They're not just adding new stuff. They're actively trying to finish the developer's original work, using the pieces left on the cutting room floor, fulfilling that original, boundless ambition.
It's quite remarkable. They're patching the holes left by time and budget constraints.
Which leaves us with, I think, a really interesting final thought for you, the listener, to chew on.
Go for it.
The definitive version of Fallout 3, right? The capital wasteland, as Bethesda first imagined it, in all its sprawling, complex glory. Maybe that version doesn't actually exist on the disc that shipped back in 2008.
Where does it exist then?
Maybe the truest, most complete version of Fallout 3 is the one that exists now, years later. Thanks to the community's efforts to painstakingly reintegrate all that cut DNA back into the game.
That's a fascinating idea. The players finished the vision.
Yeah. What does it really say about a game, a masterpiece even, when its fullest potential is only truly unlocked years down the line by the fans who loved it enough to go digging through the digital trash?
Right.
Is the ultimate capital wasteland the one the community rebuilt from the echoes of discarded ambition?
Something to think about next time you're wandering those ruins.
Absolutely. Go forth, explore those digital ghosts of DC. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Pleasure as always. We'll see you next time.